we got our boards planed down, all the glue off. I will still need to do a final sanding on these, but they're laying flat, no rock to them. So I've taken some chalk and I've just drawn a rough outline. I'm not an artist. You don't have to be an artist. This just gives me a rough layout. So on this particular one, on the lower end, I'm just going to round off. And the great part is your two corners don't have to be at the same radius. It's all in design. To me, woodworking is an art form, and I don't believe that you have to make everything perfectly square or rectangular, and you don't have to make all radiuses exact or equal to one another. It's all about design. I'm going to leave the edges fairly straight. The upper end, we're going to round off right there. Do a little rounding off here for the handle. And I'll cut a hole here that your hand will be able to grip into. And I'll use my oscillating spindle sander to get in there and sand that out. But let's get out the jigsaw and a couple of clamps. And we're going to cut some rough radiuses. Okay, we're just going to clamp these boards to the edge of my table saw. Use what you got. You don't have to have a robo or whatever his name is bench in order to turn out good products. Use what you've got. If you want to build one of those fancy benches down the road, go for it. But present place and time, we're going to use what we got. And I'm just going to rough cut these, and then I'll fine tune them with some sanding. In woodworking, things happen. I just didn't like the way the handle was turning out on this one. It was too thin on one side, and the last thing I want is, well, a handle breaking off for a customer. I just wasn't happy with it, so I just rounded it off. And guess what? It's still a charcuterie board. Some lucky person will be just as happy with this. But now we've got it rounded off. Now we're going to get out our Festool sander and we're going to do some more sanding. With these boards, I always sand to at least 320 grit to get a fine finish. But I'm going to stop at 220 and I'm going to raise the grain, and then I'll go back and work from 120 up through 320, and that way whenever I put oil on it, the grain doesn't raise on me. Always raise your grain and come back through your sanding. Okay, we've made our way through. We did 120, then we stopped, we filled some holes with some Starbond colored CA glue. Now we've sanded that down and gone through 180. Now we're at 220. We're going to sand through this and then we'll raise the grain and come back at it again. Now before we flip and hit the other side, I wanted to do a reminder. Let the abrasive and the sander do the work. Don't dig in. Don't ever be tempted to turn your sander on edge. You will sand a gouge in your wood. Just let it do the work for you. Let the weight of the device apply the abrasive, and no extra pressure is needed. And how long does it take? It takes as long as it takes. Every piece is different, and this one isn't bad at all. Nobody just lives for sanding, but it's something we have to do. Okay, you can use water. I use denatured alcohol. Do they both work? Yeah. A good friend of mine that does a lot of turning, turns a lot of bowls, he put me on denatured alcohol, and I've been pleased with the performance. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Plus, denatured alcohol evaporates a lot quicker. Oh boy, that gives me a look of what the grain's gonna look like when we oil this board down. Look at that. But I'm gonna apply this. I'm gonna let it completely dry. Like I said, alcohol evaporates much quicker than water, so I'll be back sanding a lot quicker. Then we'll flip it and hit the other side. Okay. We did the grain raising on both sides. We sanded back 120, 180. Now we're at 220. We'll do that at 320, and this board will be finished. Forgot to mention in my sanding tips earlier, always go with the grain. Don't go cross grain. You will put marks in the board that will show up when you apply finish, so go with the grain. Okay, we just finished up at 320. The only thing I've got left to do on this board is wipe it down with a tack rag. I want to get all that, any fine dust off of it before I apply my mineral oil from Howard's. I love Howard's brand mineral oil. Now, you can get your Howard's brand mineral oil at woodcraft.com. So we're going to get on to the other two boards, get them finished up, and then we'll apply some oil. Okay. You recall, this was one board, and I ripped it in half, and I used my Wood River table saw blade to do that. And as you can see, nice, sharp, clean edges. I love the blades. If you're looking for a new blade, you'll be remiss for not at least looking into the Wood River blades, because they are fantastic blades. But anyway, I wanted to put a radius on the corners. This time I wanted to make them all equal, and so I'll put a radius there to determine what radius I wanted. I just looked around the shop, found several things, and found what I determined to be the best look. Who says that Titebond isn't multitasking or multifaceted? Use the can of the Titebond CA glue, lined it up on either edge, traced around, and used my jigsaw and rough cut the corners. Now time to smooth that up with a little sanding action. Now, as I've said before, these are heirloom quality cutting board kits. For the new woodworker, the beginner, this is something that you can do with the most minimal of tools. You do not have to have a full woodworking shop to do it. Now let's go put some oil on these boards. Now this is my favorite part, when I get to apply the Howard's cutting board oil onto the finished product, and oh, how it makes a grain pop. It just, something about it, it never gets old, and you'll enjoy it too. You realize the true beauty of natural wood. Now, apply a liberal amount, wipe it on, get all edges, bottom, top. I set mine on 3 pens or pencils, let air circulate around it, let it sit overnight, come back the next day, do a second coat. May take a third or fourth, let the wood tell you, but when it stops absorbing, then you're done. You can also maintain your boards with a product from Howard's called Butcher Block Conditioner, also available at Woodcraft. For complete instructions on how to maintain a cutting board, on my YouTube channel, Clay Black LBC Woodworks, I have a complete video on oiling and maintaining cutting boards. This will give you all the insight to what you need to do for ongoing maintenance, as well as when you do the initial treatment on your boards after you've completed it. And you will need to re-oil the boards at a minimum about every 3 months, because you don't want a cutting board to dry out. Now, as you can see, as I said before, these are heirloom quality boards. Thanks again. Remember, click the subscribe button, click the notification bell. Clay Black LBC Woodworks.